It's a lovely day, but there's a chilly breeze ruffling the surface of the sea. Below, on the prom, people scurry along in their ones or twos. Many of them have headphones and earbuds. What are they listening to? What's so important that they can't enjoy the sounds of the waves and the gulls here and now? What are they all thinking? Well, that's not for me to know. Oh, let's go in and have a cup of coffee before we get cold. Hello, I'm Peter John Cooper. We've all got used to the idea that there are people watching and listening, wanting to know as much about us as they can to feed the algorithm. I always feel a twinge of sympathy for whoever it is who has to monitor my Facebook nonsense. Anyway, today's story is read by that wonderful actor and friend, Elcho de Vries. Over to you, Elcho.
Duane's Cowboy Boots. Duane took a gulp from his paper cup. It was coffee. It was black coffee. It was very good coffee.
In a little while, thought Duane, I will send out for a donut, a Krispy Kreme with pink icing and fudge chunks. That will be good,
thought Duane. He paused.
But not yet. I will not send out for a Krispy Kreme donut yet, as I must watch my waistline, and I ate a donut only an hour ago.
Duane liked to be precise in his thinking, so he checked his large Breitling watch.
55 minutes ago, I mean,
Duane corrected himself. Duane looked back at his computer screen. Odd words and phrases scrawled across it in an almost random way. But there was a pattern there. Duane knew there was a pattern there. All he had to do was find it. Duane liked his job. It was very simple watching this screen and trying to see some sort of sense in it. Duane was a CIA operative based in Langley, Fairfax County, Virginia, USA. He liked working for the CIA, as all he had to do was watch the screen, and he could send out for coffee and donuts whenever he felt like it. Sometimes he felt a little pang of loneliness, as he saw no one else all day long whilst he was at his post. His orders for coffee and donuts were left on a little table outside his cubicle. Sometimes, when he popped his head out to pick up the coffee and donuts, he lingered briefly to see if he could spot anyone else in the corridor. But he never had. He knew there must be dozens of other operatives like him in their cubicles, staring at the same sort of screens. Hundreds, thousands even in this vast, he supposed it was vast, underground concrete complex of long, echoing corridors lined with identical little cubicles. But he never saw another soul. Not even the coffee and donut deliverers and, he supposed, There must be hundreds of them scurrying back and forth this way and that, delivering coffee and donuts to the thousands of identical cubicles in hundreds of echoing corridors throughout the concrete building. And then when he thought more about it, it probably wasn't just black coffee. It was probably cappuccinos and macchiatos and double-shot skinny lattes. And maybe there was more than just donuts out there. Maybe there was cheesecake and apple strudel and so on. Maybe some operatives even ordered tea and ate burgers. It was possible. No, it was likely, although he had never seen any evidence of it. In the training for this job, they had reminded him that, although he was sat at his own at a computer screen all day long, he was, in fact, still in the front line of CIA operations, as he was monitoring for possible subversive activity on the Internet. And whilst he was monitoring subversive activity, he was a CIA operative, so he was expected to turn up for work, properly presented in well-pressed grey suit, shiny black shoes, white shirt, and a tie of a discreet color. He was not expected to wear rings or any other jewelry. Duane was not of a naturally rebellious nature, and he knew that those of a naturally rebellious nature were the type of people who caused the subversive activity he was trying to spot. But for all his natural conformity, after a few months of duty at his screen, when he had not observed another living soul, he took to wearing his favorite cowboy boots under his neatly pressed grey suit. The cowboy boots had intricate tooling all down the sides, and Duane felt comfortable in them. If he was ever questioned about the boots, he would say that he was able to undertake his duty more efficiently wearing comfortable cowboy boots without all that distracting pinching emanating from the stiff, shiny black regulation shoes. But months had passed, and there had been no memo or directive about his cowboy boots. So he sometimes even allowed them to loll next to the computer screen on the desk, instead of keeping them hidden away in the dark recesses beneath it. But for the cowboy boots, Duane prided himself on being a model CIA operative. His training had been thorough, and he was proud of the fact that Western democracy was in his hands, and no member of any subversive organization anywhere in the world could possibly get the better of him. Duane suddenly realized that he had been letting his mind wander instead of monitoring the Internet for subversive activity. How long? He checked his chunky Breitling. 3 minutes. He felt a sudden surge of panic. How much traffic had passed in 3 minutes? What if, after his months of monitoring, he had just let a direct terrorist threat pass by, and somewhere a bomb was going off in a shopping mall and innocent lives were being lost? It would be a disaster. In the ensuing inquiry, somebody would trace the lapse back to his computer and to him, and he would be paraded before the rest of the operatives. His cowboy boots would be pointed out, and he would be deemed to be of a rebellious nature and entirely unsuited for this type of work. He would be drummed out of the CIA, and there might even be a bout of waterboarding, although he knew for a fact that the CIA did not indulge in that sort of practice. But at least he would wave goodbye to free coffee and donuts forever. Duane quickly scrolled back through the last 3 minutes of traffic and sped read until he was up to date. There had been no subversive activity, and the world and his cowboy boots and coffee and donuts were safe. Duane noted that this had not been the first time his mind had wandered. He had caught himself wandering several times during the last week, and each time he had vowed to give up the cowboy boots, go back to the regulation shiny black shoes, and drink more black coffee to keep his brain sharp and active. But then he had found at the end of the day that he had got through without there being a bomb going off in a shopping mall somewhere, so he felt vindicated in sticking to his current dress code breach. The trouble was that his work did give plenty of scope for wandering. Duane's job was to monitor all the Facebook traffic in a place somewhere in the world called Bournemouth. The fact was that Bournemouth seemed to be an infinitely dull place with a lower than usual threat level and the very minimum of subversive activity. Bournemouth. He tried saying the word out loud. He said it in two distinct syllables. Born and mouth. It sounded as dull as the Facebook traffic seemed to be, like a mouthful of sawdust. Bournemouth. Bournemouth. Duane couldn't imagine where Bournemouth was or what it was like. It could have been in the middle of the Gobi Desert or the frozen Russian steppes. Wherever it was, nothing ever happened there. It was dull. 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 So he took another gulp of good black coffee to wash the sawdust taste out of his mouth, and settled back to monitoring Bournemouth for subversive activity. The Facebook traffic that Duane had to monitor went something like this. Sun is shining, great day for the beach, LOL. Raining again, LOL. Another great night, completely rat-arsed, where's the paracetamol, ROFL. Duane sometimes got glimpses of political unrest. The council have not emptied my dustbin again. The council must do something about dog poo. When are they going to pull that eyesore down? These would not be followed by a LOL or a ROFL, but by an emoji of a frowning face. Duane was still puzzled why people laughed out loud or even rolled around on the floor laughing at such inanities, or got so upset about such trivialities. In the end, he realized that perhaps their lives were as dull as his, without the compensation of the knowledge that they were protecting Western democracy against an asymmetric threat. It was the sort of place you would expect some subversive activity, just to liven the place up. Then, out of the blue, just as he had decided he would have another donut after all, he spotted a message flash across the screen. It said, "Hi, Duane." At first, Duane did not register what it said. It was such a little thing, but after a split second, he scrolled back to read the message again. There it was. "Hi, Duane." Duane studied it for a moment and then decided that there must be thousands of Duanes out there in Bournemouth. It was just some sort of coincidence. But a few minutes later came another one. "What's the weather like in Langley, Fairfax County, Virginia, Duane?" Again, Duane calculated the probabilities. Duane was a common enough name in Langley, Virginia. Why, he knew at least 3 himself. But at the same time, he instinctively grasped that there was something subversive going on. This was it. This was what his training was all about. He swung the cowboy boots smartly under the desk. If he had to call a supervisor, he wanted no complications. The trouble was, he didn't really know what the procedure was in cases such as these. Bomb in schoolyard, time to go off at midday, LOL, or crash jet into Bournemouth shopping mall, ROFL, seemed fairly straightforward. But nowhere in the training manual did it say anything about somebody actually contacting a CIA operative by name. And he had studied that over and over again whilst he was trying to find a loophole about cowboy boots in the dress code. For once in all his days at Langley, Virginia, he decided not to record what he had observed in his slim black notebook. The next day, he decided that it had all been some sort of dream. But it was a sign, a warning to him, and he vowed not to wear the cowboy boots again. And to make up for it, he would try the apple strudel when he ordered his coffee. But in the car, he discovered he had slipped the cowboy boots on unconsciously as he had left the house. Too late now, he thought. The messages began again as soon as he sat down in his cubicle and turned on the monitor. Duane, how's the coffee and donuts? And Duane began to sweat. He fervently wished he was wearing the shiny blacks today, and he fervently promised God that he would never wear his cowboy boots again if only this would go away. But it did not go away. It got worse. Why aren't you wearing your nice shiny black shoes, Duane? His white shirt was wringing wet with perspiration. He panicked. Before he could help himself, he was sending a reply. Yes, of course I'm wearing them. What do you take me for? A damn subversive? All at once, he was horrified by what he had done. It was against all regulations. It was the regulation in all operations. Admit nothing. He had admitted to someone out there in Bournemouth that the CIA was monitoring the place. He had acted on impulse, and his impulse had demonstrated his real nature. He was as much a subversive as all those Bournemouth Al-Qaeda cells. He plunged his head into his hands. With trembling fingers, Duane closed the screen. He had screwed up. He had betrayed his colleagues, the CIA, his country, Western democracy, and, above all, he had betrayed himself. No more could he draw the cloak of anonymity around himself. He had proved himself to be unreliable, to be one of those of a rebellious nature. He might as well apply for a registration card for the Communist Party. He was finished. The only subversive activity he had seen today was his, and his alone. He had allowed his presence to be revealed. He was finished. Sighing, he stepped out of the cubicle, and at once a wave of regret swept over him. Bournemouth had got the better of him, and he had never had the chance to try the apple strudel.
Thank you, Elcho, for that superb reading. Although I wrote that before I started doing these podcasts, the statistics show that I do have somebody who is a regular listener in Virginia in the US. Hello to you. In fact, you're my most assiduous listener in the US. I'm sure you're not with the CIA, but if you are, why not leave a message about how you spend your day? If your name actually is Duane, then that is just a tiny bit scary. But keep tuning in, and I'll be with you all next week.